Picture this. A future king of England standing on stage with two of the world's biggest music superstars, singing along to classic rock anthems while thousands cheer. Imagine the heir to the British throne sharing intimate conversations with a country-turned pop princess who has sold over 200 million records worldwide. What happens when royal protocol meets rock and roll rebellion? When centuries-old traditions collide with modern celebrity culture. This isn't a fantasy or a dream sequence from a movie. This is the incredible true story of how Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, formed genuine friendships with Taylor Swift and Jon Bon Jovi that change how the world sees both royalty and celebrity culture forever. In a world where royal appearances are carefully scripted and celebrity encounters are often staged for publicity, these meetings broke every rule in the book. What started as charity events became authentic connections that would surprise everyone involved. From nervous backstage conversations to spontaneous musical performances, from breaking royal protocol to creating moments that would trend worldwide on social media. Get ready to discover the behind-the-scenes moments that the cameras almost missed, the conversations that weren't in any official script, and the genuine human connections that formed between a prince who was learning to balance duty with authenticity and two music legends who saw past the crown to find a real person underneath. This is the story of how music became the bridge between two completely different worlds, creating friendships that would inspire millions and prove that genuine human connection knows no boundaries, not even royal ones. The crisp November air in London carried more than just the usual autumn chill on that memorable evening in 2013. Inside the opulent ballroom of Kensington Palace, Prince William adjusted his black tie for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The annual Winter Whites Gala was about to begin, and as patron of Centrepoint, the homeless charity, he knew this night would be crucial for raising both funds and awareness. What he didn't know was that this evening would mark the beginning of two friendships that would change his perspective on celebrity, music, and genuine human connection forever. The guest list read like a who's who of British society, but two names stood out among the usual suspects of aristocrats and philanthropists. Swift, at the height of her Red album success, had agreed to perform, while Jon Bon Jovi would be making a surprise appearance to support the cause. For William, who had grown up listening to both artists, this was far more exciting than any typical royal engagement. As the evening's host, William moved through the early reception with the practiced ease of someone born into public life. He shook hands with donors, posed for photographs, and delivered the perfectly measured responses that years of royal training had ingrained in him. But beneath the polished exterior, he was genuinely nervous about meeting two of his musical heroes. His private secretary had briefed him extensively on both artists, but no amount of preparation could ready him for what was about to unfold. Taylor Swift arrived fashionably on time, her security detail creating a small stir among the other guests. At 23, she was already a global superstar, but walking into a royal palace still felt surreal. She had performed for presidents and prime ministers, but meeting a prince in his own home was an entirely different experience. Her stylist had chosen a stunning floor-length gown that struck the perfect balance between elegance and contemporary fashion, knowing that every detail would be scrutinized by both fashion critics and royal watchers. The first introduction happened in a private anteroom, away from the cameras and curious guests. William's equerry made the formal introductions, but within moments, the royal protocol gave way to genuine conversation. Taylor was struck by how different William seemed from the formal figure she had seen in newspapers and television coverage. He was taller than she expected, with an easy smile and a self-deprecating sense of humor that immediately put her at ease. "I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous," William confessed with a laugh. "I'm much better at cutting ribbons and making small talk about the weather than I am at talking to musical superstars." His honesty was refreshing, and Taylor found herself relaxing for the first time since arriving at the palace. They talked about her journey from country music to pop, her recent album, and her experiences performing around the world. William shared his own love of music, admitting that he had been known to sing along to her songs when driving alone. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jon Bon Jovi, whose presence filled the room with an unmistakable rock star energy. At 51, he had decades of experience with high-profile events, but even he seemed momentarily awed by the palace setting. William greeted him with obvious enthusiasm, and it became clear that this wasn't just polite royal interest, but genuine fan appreciation. "Your Royal Highness," John began formally, but William quickly interjected, "Please, just William tonight. I've been listening to your music since I was at school." This simple request broke down barriers instantly, and soon the three of them were engaged in animated conversation about music, touring, and the challenges of maintaining authenticity in the public eye. What struck all three of them was how naturally the conversation flowed. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they found common ground in their shared experiences of living under constant public scrutiny, the pressure to maintain public personas, and the challenge of finding genuine connections in their professional lives. William spoke openly about the isolation that could come with royal duty, while Taylor and John shared stories about the loneliness that could accompany fame despite being surrounded by thousands of adoring fans. The formal dinner proceeded with typical royal precision, but the energy had shifted. William found himself genuinely excited about the performances to come, while Taylor and John were both touched by his obvious passion for the charitable cause. During his speech, William spoke with unusual emotion about the work of Centerpoint, and both musicians could see that this wasn't just another royal obligation, but a cause he truly cared about. As the evening moved toward the entertainment portion, Taylor prepared for her performance with unusual nerves. She had performed in front of massive stadium crowds, but something about singing in front of Prince William in the intimate palace setting felt uniquely challenging. Her setlist included some of her biggest hits, but she had also prepared something special for the occasion. Jon Bon Jovi watched from the side of the makeshift stage, impressed by the young woman's professionalism despite her obvious nerves. He had been in the music industry long enough to recognize genuine talent and authentic emotion, and he could see both in Taylor's preparation. His own performance was planned as a surprise for later in the evening, but watching the careful attention to detail that went into every aspect of the evening made him even more committed to making it special. The audience, a mix of charity supporters, celebrities, and dignitaries, buzzed with anticipation as the lights dimmed for Taylor's performance. William took his seat in the front row, his usual composed demeanor barely containing his excitement. This was far from the stiff, formal royal events he was accustomed to, and he found himself genuinely looking forward to what promised to be an extraordinary evening. As Taylor took the stage, guitar in hand, she caught William's eye and offered a small smile that seemed to say, "Here we go." The first notes of her opening song filled the ornate ballroom, creating a magical atmosphere that none of the guests would ever forget. What started as a formal charity gala was transforming into something much more meaningful for everyone involved. The evening was just beginning, but already it was clear that something special was happening. Three people from very different worlds were discovering that beneath the titles, fame, and public personas, they were simply human beings looking for authentic connection. The music that had brought them together was about to create bonds that would last for years to come, changing not just their own lives, but the way the public perceived the intersection of royalty and celebrity culture. William leaned forward in his seat, completely absorbed in the performance, unaware that cameras were capturing his genuine enjoyment and enthusiasm. These images would later become iconic, showing a side of the future king that the public had rarely seen. But in that moment, he was simply a music fan enjoying an incredible performance in his own home, surrounded by people who shared his passion for making a difference in the world. The foundation for lasting friendships was being laid with every note, every conversation, and every shared moment of laughter. None of them could have predicted where these connections would lead, but they all sensed that this evening marked the beginning of something significant that would extend far beyond the palace walls and into their personal lives. Taylor Swift's voice filled the grand ballroom with a clarity and emotion that seemed to transform the very air around them. Her opening song, Love Story, created an immediate connection with the audience, but it was her interaction with Prince William that truly captivated everyone present. As she sang the familiar lyrics about a love that transcended social boundaries, the irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Here was an American pop star performing for British royalty, creating a moment that seemed to embody the very spirit of the song itself. William found himself completely absorbed in the performance, his usual royal composure replaced by the genuine enthusiasm of a music lover. His security detail, positioned discreetly around the room, had never seen him so animated at a formal event. The cameras caught every smile, every moment where he mouthed along with the lyrics, and every instance of spontaneous applause. These images would later become some of the most shared royal photographs of the year, showing a side of the future king that the public had been hungry to see. Between songs, Taylor spoke directly to the audience about the importance of Centerpoint's work, but her words seemed particularly directed toward William. She had done her research before the event, learning about his genuine commitment to helping young people experiencing homelessness. Her praise wasn't the usual celebrity endorsement, but came from a place of real respect for his dedication to the cause. William's visible emotional response to her words created a moment of authentic connection that transcended the formal setting. The surprise came during her third song, when Taylor made an unexpected announcement. "I'd like to invite someone very special to join me on stage," she said, her eyes finding William in the front row. "Your Royal Highness, I believe you know the words to this one." The audience turned to look at William, who appeared genuinely shocked by the invitation. The song she had chosen was Live on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, a clever nod to John's presence at the event, and a song she knew William would recognize. For a moment, the ballroom fell completely silent. Royal protocol had no provision for this kind of spontaneous interaction. William's private secretary looked alarmed, clearly calculating the potential risks and benefits of such an unprecedented breach of formal procedure. But as William looked around the room, seeing the encouraging faces of the charity supporters and the hopeful expression on Taylor's face, he made a decision that would be talked about for years to come. Standing from his seat, William walked toward the stage with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The applause that erupted was unlike anything typically heard at royal events. It was spontaneous, enthusiastic, and genuine. As he climbed the few steps to join Taylor, Jon Bon Jovi appeared from the wings, guitar in hand, ready to provide the musical backing for what was about to become one of the most memorable moments in modern royal history. "I should warn you," William said into the microphone, his voice carrying a hint of nervous laughter, "I'm much better at this in the car when no one's listening." His self-deprecating humor endeared him even more to the audience, who were witnessing a side of royalty they had never seen before. Taylor and John exchanged amused glances, both impressed by his willingness to step so far outside his comfort zone. The opening chords of Livin' on a Prayer filled the room, and what happened next exceeded everyone's expectations. William's singing voice, while not professionally trained, carried the enthusiasm and heart of someone who truly loved the song. His performance wasn't polished, but it was absolutely authentic. The audience could see that he was genuinely enjoying himself, and his obvious pleasure in the moment was infectious. Taylor and John provided professional backing vocals, but they stepped back to let William have his moment in the spotlight. The sight of a future king of England belting out rock anthems on stage was surreal, but it was also deeply humanizing. Here was someone who had been born into one of the most formal institutions in the world, choosing to embrace spontaneity and joy in front of hundreds of witnesses and countless cameras. The performance became a true collaboration, with all three artists feeding off each other's energy. John's guitar work provided the perfect foundation, Taylor's harmonies added richness to the sound, and Williams' enthusiastic delivery drove the emotional core of the performance. When they reached the iconic "Whoa-Oh" section of the song, the entire audience joined in, creating a moment of collective joy that transcended social boundaries and formal expectations. As the song concluded, the applause was thunderous and sustained. William, slightly breathless and clearly exhilarated, hugged both Taylor and John before addressing the crowd. That, he said, his voice filled with genuine emotion, was absolutely incredible. Thank you for letting me be part of something so special. His words carried the weight of someone who had just experienced something transformative, a break from the constraints of his usual public role. The aftermath of the performance created a buzz that extended far beyond the ballroom. Guests who had attended hundreds of charity galas agreed that they had never witnessed anything quite like it. The combination of musical talent, royal presence, and genuine human connection had created something magical that would be remembered long after the evening ended. But, perhaps more importantly, the performance had created a bond between the three participants that went beyond the professional or ceremonial. In choosing to join them on stage, William had shown a level of trust and vulnerability that was rare in royal circles. Taylor and John, in turn, had provided him with an opportunity to express a side of his personality that was typically hidden from public view. The rest of Taylor's set took on a different energy after the collaboration. She performed with increased confidence, buoyed by William's willingness to participate and the audience's enthusiastic response. Her final song, "Shake It Off," seemed particularly appropriate for the evening's theme of breaking free from expectations and embracing authenticity. William remained near the stage for the rest of her performance, clearly reluctant for the magical evening to end. When Bon Jovi took the stage for his own set later in the evening, the energy in the room was already electric. His experience and stagecraft were evident from the first note, but what made his performance special was the way it built on the foundation that had been established earlier. The audience was primed for more magical moments, and John didn't disappoint. His set list included many of his greatest hits, but it was his interaction with the audience that truly stood out. He spoke eloquently about the importance of charitable work and the power of music to bring people together across social and cultural divides. His words seemed to acknowledge the significance of what had happened earlier in the evening, validating the choice that all three of them had made to step outside their comfort zones. During his performance of "Wanted Dead or Alive," John invited both Taylor and William to join him on stage once again. This time, there was no hesitation from any of them. The three had found a creative chemistry that was undeniable, and the audience was eager to witness more of their collaboration. The impromptu performance that followed was less structured than their first collaboration, but no less impactful. The evening concluded with all three artists on stage together, leading the audience in a sing-along version of "You Give Love a Bad Name." The sight of Prince William, future King of England, rocking out with two of the world's biggest music stars became an instant sensation. Videos of the performance would be viewed millions of times online, but for those present in the ballroom, no recording could capture the electricity and emotion of the live experience. As the formal program ended and guests began to mingle during the after-party, the conversations inevitably centered on what they had just witnessed. The evening had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, both in terms of fundraising for Centerpoint and in creating a new template for royal engagement with popular culture. William had shown that it was possible to maintain royal dignity while also embracing spontaneity and genuine human connection. The friendships that began that evening would continue to grow and evolve, but the foundation had been firmly established through music, mutual respect, and a shared willingness to take risks in pursuit of authentic moments. None of them could have predicted the impact that their collaboration would have, but they all knew that something special had been created that would extend far beyond the palace walls. The after-party following the Winter Whites Gala created an atmosphere unlike any other royal event in recent memory. The formal receiving lines and carefully orchestrated conversations gave way to genuine interactions, sparked by the evening's unexpected musical collaborations. Prince William found himself at the center of a completely different kind of royal gathering, one where spontaneity and authentic connection had replaced rigid protocol as the defining characteristics of the evening. In a smaller, more intimate drawing room within Kensington Palace, William, Taylor, and John found themselves naturally gravitating toward each other, continuing conversations that had begun during their impromptu performances. The adrenaline from their time on stage was still evident, but it was being replaced by something deeper, a recognition that they had shared something genuinely special that went beyond entertainment or charity fundraising. Taylor, still energized from the performance, but beginning to process what had just happened, found herself amazed by William's transformation throughout the evening. The formal, slightly nervous prince who had greeted her earlier had evolved into someone who seemed genuinely comfortable in his own skin, willing to take risks and embrace moments of pure joy. "I have to say," she told him as they settled into comfortable chairs around a fireplace, "that was the most fun I've had performing in ages. You really went for it up there." William's response revealed both his surprise at his own behavior and his growing comfort with these new friendships. "Honestly, I'm not sure what came over me," he admitted with a laugh. "My private secretary looked like he was going to have a heart attack when you invited me on stage. But there was something about the moment that felt too good to pass up. I spend so much time thinking about how everything I do will be perceived that I sometimes forget to actually live in the moment." John, who had been observing the interaction with the experienced eye of someone who had spent decades navigating fame and public scrutiny, offered his own perspective. "That's the thing about music," he said. "When it's working right, it strips away all the pretense and just leaves you with the truth. Tonight felt like that. Just three people who love music sharing something real with an audience that could feel it too." The conversation that followed revealed depths to each of their personalities that public personas rarely allowed to surface. William spoke candidly about the challenges of balancing his royal duties with his desire for authentic experiences and genuine connections. The weight of expectation that came with his position was something he rarely discussed publicly, but in the relaxed atmosphere created by their shared musical experience, he found himself opening up in ways that surprised even him. Taylor shared her own struggles with maintaining authenticity while managing a global career and constant public attention. At 23, she was still learning how to navigate the pressures of fame while staying true to her artistic vision and personal values. The conversation revealed a maturity and thoughtfulness that often got lost in media coverage focused on her romantic relationships and public feuds. John's contribution to the discussion came from years of experience managing both massive success and personal challenges while maintaining his artistic integrity. His perspective on the music industry, celebrity culture, and the importance of using platform for positive purposes provided wisdom that both William and Taylor found valuable. The age difference between them became an asset rather than a barrier, with John naturally taking on something of a mentor role. As the evening progressed, their conversations moved beyond the professional to the personal. William talked about his military service and his growing involvement with charitable causes, revealing a depth of commitment that went far beyond royal obligation. His passion for helping young people experiencing homelessness was clearly genuine, and both Taylor and John were impressed by his hands-on approach to the work rather than simply lending his name to causes. Taylor discussed her own charitable activities and her growing awareness of her platform's power to affect positive change. Her recent experiences with fan interactions and her evolving understanding of her influence on young people had led her to think more seriously about her responsibilities as a public figure. The conversation revealed someone who is thoughtfully considering how to use her success to make a meaningful difference. John spoke about his long history of charitable work, including his own foundation's efforts to address homelessness and poverty. His stories about hands-on volunteer work and the relationships he had built with people experiencing hardship provided both inspiration and practical insights for William and Taylor. The conversation revealed shared values that transcended their different backgrounds and career paths. What made these conversations particularly significant was their unguarded nature. All three had spent years carefully managing their public images and controlling their narratives, but the evening's events had created a space where they could speak more freely. The musical collaboration had broken down barriers and established a level of trust that typically took much longer to develop. The discussion also touched on the challenges they each faced in their personal lives. Williams spoke about the pressure of living up to royal expectations while also trying to carve out a role that felt meaningful and authentic to him. His relationship with Catherine Middleton was still relatively new at the time, and he was learning to balance personal happiness with public duty. Taylor discussed the difficulty of maintaining normal relationships while living under constant media scrutiny. Her experiences with public relationships and the way they were covered in the press had made her cautious about trusting new people, but she found herself unusually comfortable with both William and John. Their shared experience of living in the public created an immediate understanding that didn't require explanation. John offered perspective on maintaining long-term relationships and family stability while managing a demanding career in entertainment. His marriage and family life had survived decades in the spotlight, and his insights about protecting what mattered most while still pursuing professional success resonated with both younger artists. The evening also included lighter moments that revealed their personalities beyond their public roles. William's sense of humor, which rarely showed in formal settings, emerged through stories about his university experiences and his relationships with his brother Harry and their father. His impressions of various officials and dignitaries had both Taylor and John laughing until tears ran down their faces. Taylor's storytelling ability, honed through years of writing songs about personal experiences, brought their conversations to life with vivid details and emotional honesty. Her ability to find humor in even difficult situations and her talent for mimicking accents and mannerisms made her an engaging conversationalist who kept both men thoroughly entertained. John's collection of touring stories, accumulated over decades of performing around the world, provided endless entertainment. His experiences with everything from equipment failures to unusual fan encounters created a narrative thread that kept their conversations lively and engaging. His ability to find meaningful lessons in even the most chaotic situations impressed both William and Taylor. As the night grew later and other guests began to leave, the three found themselves reluctant to end their conversations. The evening had created something unexpected, not just professional connections or polite acquaintanceships, but the foundation for genuine friendships that would continue to develop long after the last guest departed and the palace returned to its normal routines. The staff at Kensington Palace, accustomed to formal events that ended with polite farewells and scheduled departures, found themselves accommodating a much more relaxed timeline. William's clear enjoyment of his conversations with Taylor and John created a different atmosphere that required flexibility from everyone involved. The evening was extending far beyond its planned schedule, but no one seemed inclined to cut it short. When the evening finally did conclude with Taylor and John's departures carefully coordinated by security teams and palace staff, all three knew that something significant had been established. Exchange of private contact information and tentative plans for future meetings confirmed that their connections would continue beyond this single evening. The impact of their conversations would influence their future interactions with media, their approach to charitable work, and their understanding of how authentic relationships could develop even within the constraints of public life. None of them could have predicted where these friendships would lead, but they all recognized that the evening had created possibilities that didn't exist before they walked into that ballroom.